Emily's voice echoed through the quiet house, sharp and urgent. "Mom, I need you right now. Please come to my room." And Sarah froze, her heart skipping a beat. Something in the tone made her blood run cold. She dropped the dish she was holding, her hand trembling slightly, and hurried up the stairs, her mind racing with questions. What could have happened to make her usually confident, calm daughter sound so desperate? As she reached the top of the stairs, Sarah paused at the door to Emily's room, hearing soft sniffles and the quiet sound of Emily pacing, her bare feet brushing against the carpet, her movements restless, almost frantic, the kind of energy that comes from a mind tangled with fear and confusion. Sarah opened the door gently, careful not to startle her, and saw Emily standing by the window, looking out but seeing nothing, her fingers twisting the edge of the curtain, knuckles white, eyes wet and wide, a mixture of fear and shame painting her face. "Emily, sweetheart, what's wrong?" Sarah asked, her voice steady, though inside a knot of worry had formed. Emily turned slowly, eyes meeting her mother's for a brief moment before looking away, biting her lip, trying to hold back tears. The room filled with a tense silence that was almost unbearable, the kind of silence where words are waiting to explode, yet can't find the courage to come out. Emily's chest rose and fell quickly, as if she had been holding her breath for hours, and now the weight of what she wanted to say threatened to crush her. Finally, Emily sat on the edge of her bed, hugging her knees, hiding herself almost completely in her own arms, and whispered, "I didn't know who else to tell. I couldn't keep it inside anymore." Sarah sat beside her, her hand resting gently on Emily's shoulder, trying to offer comfort, trying to let her daughter know she was safe, but Emily pulled slightly away, as if afraid of being touched, as if contact would make the world more real, harsher, more dangerous. "It's about someone you trust," Emily said, her voice breaking, the words barely escaping her lips, and Sarah felt the air leave the room, felt her stomach drop, her mind spinning. She had learned long ago that those words always carried weight, that when someone says someone you trust has hurt them, nothing could prepare you for the truth, yet she tried to stay calm, to keep her voice gentle. "Emily, whatever it is, you can tell me. You don't have to be afraid." But Emily's eyes filled with tears again, and she shook her head, a small, desperate motion, like she wanted to speak but her throat had closed, like she had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in her mind and it still wasn't enough. Sarah could feel her own chest tightening, a pressure that came from knowing that whatever Emily was hiding, it had been building for weeks, maybe months, something that had been eating at her from the inside, and now it was about to come out, raw and jagged, and she had to be strong enough to hold her daughter through it, to let her know she was safe, even if the world outside wasn't. Emily's voice came again, barely a whisper, trembling. "It started small things that seemed normal at first, but then, I realized they weren't." She paused, shaking her head, trying to push the thoughts away, trying to keep her composure. "I didn't want to believe it, Mom. I didn't want to see it for what it was." And Sarah could see the pain in her daughter's eyes, the guilt, the confusion, the fear that she had been wrong, that maybe she had misunderstood, and that made her heart ache, because every parent knows the feeling of helplessness, of wanting to shield your child from pain and realizing there's nothing you can do to stop it from reaching them. Sarah squeezed her daughter's hand, a gentle, grounding presence. "Emily, you did the right thing by telling me. Nothing you noticed was your fault." And Emily leaned into her slightly, though still trembling, as if the tiniest touch from her mother could anchor her, even for a moment, in the storm of her own thoughts. And Sarah realized how heavy this moment was, how delicate, how fragile. The kind of moment that could define a child's trust in their parent forever, and she knew she had to handle it with care. Emily's words spilled out slowly after that, a trickle that became a stream. "I noticed things that felt wrong, things that made me uncomfortable. I thought maybe I was imagining it, but I wasn't." And Sarah listened, every word stabbing her heart, every pause making the room colder, heavier, her mind racing to make sense of what her daughter was saying, to protect her, to plan what to do next, but knowing that for now, there was nothing but to listen, to be present, to stay calm and strong. The truth hung in the room like a weight, pressing down, pressing on their hearts, and Emily finally looked up at Sarah, her face pale, eyes wide, trembling. "It's someone in our life, someone you trust, and I don't know what to do." And Sarah's mind froze, the world narrowing down to that one phrase, someone you trust, because she knew that when trust is broken, the consequences ripple through everything, through family, through love, through every moment of innocence that had come before. And she also knew that whatever came next would change their lives, forever. Emily's hand gripped her mother's tightly, desperate for reassurance, desperate for someone to tell her it would be okay, and Sarah held it firmly, her own resolve hardening. "We'll face this together, Emily, whatever it is, we'll face it together." And for the first time in hours, Emily let herself exhale slightly, though the fear was still there, the uncertainty still thick. But she knew she wasn't alone, and in that fragile, quiet moment, the bond between mother and daughter became something unspoken, something stronger than words, ready to confront the storm that was coming, and neither of them could imagine how deep and painful it would be, but they were ready to face it, side by side, together. The house was silent again, except for the soft sound of Emily's breathing, the lamp casting long shadows across the room, and the heavy, unspoken truth that hung between them, waiting, threatening, demanding to be faced. And Sarah knew that the next steps would not be easy, that trust, once broken, is hard to repair, but she also knew that the first step had been taken, the hardest step, and now, there was no turning back, only moving forward, together, into a future that would test them, challenge them, but ultimately, define them as mother and daughter, united against a betrayal that neither had expected but both were now determined to face. Emily sat on the edge of her bed, hands trembling, eyes wide, trying to put words together while her mind raced with memories she wished she could forget. "Mom, it wasn't one thing, it was many things," she said, voice breaking, and Sarah leaned closer, her heart tightening, knowing that whatever came next would cut deeper than she could imagine, the air between them thick with tension, the room heavy with unspoken fears. "It started with small moments," Emily continued, her voice barely above a whisper, "conversations that felt too personal, touches that didn't make sense, glances that made me uncomfortable," and she hugged her knees closer, rocking slightly, like curling into herself could make the memories less real, less painful. "At first, I thought I was imagining things, that maybe I was overreacting, but it kept happening." And Sarah felt a wave of anger mix with sorrow, a protective instinct rising, a parent's natural urge to shield their child from harm. Emily paused, swallowing hard, fighting tears. "I tried to ignore it, Mom. I thought maybe I could make it stop by pretending it didn't exist," she said, voice cracking, "but I couldn't. I felt trapped, like I was walking on eggshells, trying not to upset anyone, trying not to make a big deal out of it." And Sarah's chest ached as she listened, imagining her daughter's silent suffering, every moment of doubt, every second of fear that Emily had carried alone, and the thought made her blood boil. "Every time I saw him, my stomach twisted," Emily said, her voice catching. "I felt wrong, but I also felt guilty, like I was the one responsible for noticing, for feeling uncomfortable." And she looked at Sarah, eyes pleading, searching for validation, for reassurance, for someone to tell her that it wasn't her fault. "It didn't feel like I could tell anyone, not my friends, not anyone, because what would they think? And I didn't want to hurt anyone, especially you." And Sarah reached out, taking Emily's hands into her own, holding them tightly, feeling the warmth and the fear, the vulnerability and the courage that her daughter was showing. Sarah's mind raced as Emily spoke, trying to piece together the fragments of moments, the little signs that she herself had missed, the dinners, the visits, the laughter that had seemed normal but now felt like a mask, a cover for something darker, something that had been happening right under their noses, and she felt a mixture of guilt, anger, and disbelief, knowing that she had trusted this person without hesitation, never imagining that someone so close could betray them in this way. Emily's voice trembled as she continued, It was confusing, Mom. I didn't know how to feel, I didn't know if I was being silly or if I was right, and Sarah squeezed her hands tighter. You were right, Emily, you weren't wrong, and it wasn't your fault, and Emily let out a shaky breath, a small relief passing through her, though the heaviness didn't leave, the weight of the truth still pressing down, still threatening to break them both. Emily looked down at her lap, twisting the edge of her sleeve. I kept hoping it would stop, that maybe I was misreading things, but it didn't, she admitted, tears falling freely now, and I started to feel scared, scared that no one would believe me, that I'd be blamed for noticing, for feeling, and Sarah felt her chest tighten, rage rising quietly, a protective fury that made her want to confront the person who had caused her daughter this fear, this confusion, this heartbreak, but she held herself back, knowing first they had to process, to understand, to heal. It's someone we've known for a long time, Emily said finally, her voice dropping, heavy with shame and fear. Someone I trusted, someone you trusted, and Sarah's stomach dropped, the world narrowing to that single phrase, someone you trusted, because betrayal from a familiar face cuts deeper than from a stranger. It twists everything you believed in, turns your home into a place of doubt, and makes you question every smile, every laugh, every shared memory. Sarah gently lifted Emily's chin, forcing her to meet her eyes. We will handle this together, Emily, no matter what, she said firmly, her voice steady, her mind already moving, planning, thinking, protecting, knowing that first they had to be united, that they had to confront this together, but also knowing that every step would need courage, patience, and care. Emily's lips trembled as she whispered, I was so scared, Mom. I didn't know who to tell. I didn't want to be alone, and Sarah wrapped her arms around her, pulling her close, letting her cry, letting her release the tension, letting her know that for once, she didn't have to carry the burden herself, that she could finally let someone in, finally let someone protect her. The room was silent except for the quiet sobs of Emily and the soft hum of the lamp, casting long shadows on the walls, and in that silence, a new understanding was forming, an unspoken promise, that they would face the truth, no matter how painful, no matter how complicated, that they would rebuild what had been broken, and that together, they could survive even the deepest betrayal. Sarah held Emily's hands as they sat together, the weight of reality pressing on them, knowing that the person responsible was part of their daily lives, part of the people they interacted with, shared meals with, laughed with, someone who had woven themselves into the fabric of their family, and now that fabric had been torn, leaving holes where trust had once lived, and every step forward would be careful, deliberate, full of courage. Emily's voice softened, I don't know how to feel anymore. I feel angry, scared, sad, everything at once, and Sarah nodded, it's okay to feel all of that, it's normal, you're allowed to feel, she said, squeezing her hands gently, knowing that acknowledging the emotions was the first step to healing, and that they would have to navigate them together, carefully, patiently. Emily looked at her mother, eyes searching. What do we do now? She asked quietly, a mix of hope and fear, and Sarah took a deep breath, steadying herself. We take it one step at a time, Emily. First, we understand what happened, then we protect you, then we decide how to face the person who betrayed our trust. And Emily nodded slowly, relief and fear mingling in her expression, knowing that they were no longer alone in this, that they would confront the truth together. The night stretched on, long and quiet, the weight of their secret heavy, but the bond between them stronger, forged in honesty, courage, and love, and though the road ahead would be painful and uncertain, they were ready to face it, side by side, learning that even when trust is broken, love can be the bridge that brings you back together, stronger than before. And Emily finally let herself rest her head on her mother's shoulder, knowing that for the first time in weeks she wasn't facing her fear alone. Every heartbeat carried a quiet promise, that they would face the betrayal, protect each other, and rebuild the life that had been threatened, and in the silence of that room, mother and daughter found strength, courage, and a new understanding that together, they could survive anything, even the hardest truths. The morning sunlight spilled softly through the blinds, but the house felt heavier than usual, as if the shadows of the night still clung to every corner, and Emily sat at the edge of her bed, staring at the floor, thinking about the events of the night before, the words she had finally said, the fear she had carried alone for so long, and now the weight of reality pressed down on her, sharper and colder than any night alone could hold. Sarah entered quietly, coffee in hand, careful not to break the fragile silence, and sat across from Emily at the kitchen table, letting the morning warmth mix with the tension that had filled the room. "How are you feeling?" she asked softly, but Emily only shrugged, twisting her fingers together, a small motion that showed the nervous energy still simmering under the surface. "I feel heavy," she whispered, and Sarah nodded, understanding immediately, because some burdens cannot be easily lifted, only faced. Emily's eyes were red from tears, her cheeks still flushed from the anxiety that had gripped her, and she looked up at her mother, a mixture of fear and hope in her gaze. "Mom, what happens now?" she asked, voice small, almost breaking, and Sarah reached across the table, taking her hands in hers, grounding her. "We face it together," she said firmly, "step by step, we'll figure it out, and nothing will happen without us both knowing." The words gave Emily a tiny spark of courage, a sense that she wasn't alone anymore, that someone was standing beside her, ready to protect her, to help her carry the weight she had borne alone, and in that moment, she felt the smallest flicker of relief, the first light of hope breaking through the darkness that had clouded her mind for so long. Sarah's thoughts raced, thinking about the person who had caused this pain, someone who had been part of their daily life, someone she had trusted without question, and now she felt a quiet, simmering anger, a desire to protect her daughter and reclaim the safety of their home, but she kept her expression calm, knowing that Emily needed reassurance, not confrontation. "We need to be careful, Emily," she said. "We need to plan how we handle this, but we will not let it control us." Emily nodded slowly, her lips trembling. "I'm scared, Mom," she admitted, the words coming out like a confession, "scared that it won't end, scared that people won't believe me, scared of what might happen if we confront him," and Sarah squeezed her hands tighter. "It's okay to be scared, Emily. Fear doesn't mean weakness, it means you care, it means you're brave enough to face this," and Emily took a shaky breath, letting her mother's words settle in, the truth of them grounding her in a way she hadn't felt before. The conversation continued, slow and deliberate, each word measured, each thought shared, as mother and daughter worked through the reality of the betrayal, the steps they would take, and the boundaries that needed to be established immediately. "We need distance, Emily," Sarah said. "We need to make sure he cannot manipulate or confuse you again, and we will do it together," and Emily nodded, feeling the weight of fear lighten slightly, knowing she was no longer alone in her fight. Sarah helped Emily write down everything that had happened, every small moment, every uncomfortable glance, every touch or comment that had crossed the line, the list growing steadily, a tangible proof of what Emily had experienced, and with each word written, Emily felt a small empowerment, a reclaiming of control that had been stolen from her, the first steps toward healing and justice forming in real time. After the list was complete, they talked about how to approach other family members and friends, who could be trusted, who could support them, and how to navigate the social dynamics that had once seemed safe but now felt unpredictable. "We don't have to face the world alone," Sarah said. "We will choose who we let in, and we will protect ourselves first," and Emily nodded, the clarity of purpose giving her courage, a sharp contrast to the confusion that had clouded her mind for weeks. The day went on with small, deliberate actions, calls made, messages sent, careful planning that built a framework of safety around Emily, and Sarah never let go of her daughter's hand for more than a second, always checking in, always offering reassurance, the bond between them strengthening with every small act, proving that love can be a shield against even the deepest betrayals. By late afternoon, Emily's confidence had grown slightly, enough that she could sit up straighter, speak more clearly, and even smile a little when Sarah offered quiet words of encouragement, and Sarah felt a mixture of relief and pride, knowing that her daughter's resilience was shining through, showing her that even after fear and betrayal, strength could emerge, and together, they could face anything. That evening, they confronted the person responsible, calmly and firmly, setting clear boundaries, making it known that the behavior would not be tolerated, and that the trust once given could not be regained without full accountability. And although the confrontation was tense, it was controlled, deliberate, and free from unnecessary drama, a mature way to reclaim their space and protect their family. Afterward, they sat together again, the weight of the day pressing down, but tempered by the knowledge that action had been taken, that steps had been made towards safety and justice, and Emily finally allowed herself to relax slightly, knowing that her voice had been heard, her pain acknowledged, and that she had a strong ally in her mother. Over the following days, life slowly began to regain a sense of normalcy, routines returning, laughter beginning to surface again, though the memories of betrayal lingered, a quiet reminder that trust once broken leaves its mark, yet healing is possible when love, honesty, and courage guide the way, and Emily found herself smiling more freely, speaking her mind more confidently, and feeling the bond with her mother deepen in ways that words could scarcely capture. Sarah watched her daughter grow stronger with each passing day, proud of her courage, humbled by the trust Emily had placed in her, and grateful that despite the pain, they had faced it together, proving that even in the darkest moments, family love can provide strength, clarity, and hope, and that sometimes, the hardest experiences become the foundation for the strongest bonds. By the time the sun set, Emily felt a sense of closure, not complete, but enough to breathe, enough to move forward, enough to know that she was safe, supported, and loved unconditionally, and Sarah knew that the days ahead would still bring challenges, but they had already taken the hardest step, facing betrayal together, and in that courage, they had found not only safety, but an unbreakable connection that would guide them through anything life could bring. And as the night settled in, mother and daughter sat together quietly, the house finally peaceful, knowing that trust, once shattered, can be rebuilt through love, understanding, and action, and that together, they could face the future without fear, their hearts stronger, their bond unshakable, and their spirits ready to embrace the healing journey that lay ahead.